And I am speaking to
Randi Thompson, RANDI THOMPSON.
And Randi, just so my audience and the public is familiar with who you are, who are you?
I'm a public relations and political consultant. Have been since, I moved back to Nevada in '93. Prior to that, I'm a native Nevadan. I worked on my very first Republican campaign in 1978 for Bob List as a gopher and runner. And then moved to D.C. for 10 years as a lobbyist, and I moved back to Nevada in '93. And in 1995 and '96, I was the vice chair of the Washoe County Republican Party.
So you know this territory very well, it sounds like.
I do, yes.
And the territory we're discussing today is the Washoe Republican Party.
Correct. And I'm kind of chuckling. I listened to a lot of the interview you did with Mike Kignossi, and I worked on the U.S. Senate race in 1986 for Jim Santini taking over Senator Laxalt's seat at the time. And I worked with a guy named Steve Wark, who I just learned to adore. And then Pat Robertson people took over the Republican Party, and Steve Wark became chairman of the Republican Party. And this was in, don't quote me, I should say, go look. I want to say it was like by 1990 or 92 or something, that Pat Robertson people took over the party. So we've had that kind of infiltration of super right-wing conservatives. And then there was the Tea Party that kind of tried to take over the Republican Party. And now we have the Proud Boys and the Trumpsters trying to take over the Republican Party. So for me, this is round 3.
Okay. And I want to ask this because this has become a point of contention if the Proud Boys are involved in Washoe County. Because I haven't seen official declaration of that to be found at this time, but how do we know that we have that element involved?
I have no idea. I don't even know who the Proud Boys are. So maybe just say that it's the pro-Trump crowd that still wants to see Trump brought back. Because I don't even know what the Proud Boys is or are, but I'm just hearing a little bit of what Mindy Elliott said and what Michael Kignossi said. It's like, okay, who are the Proud Boys and what are they doing? So, but let's just call it the pro-Trumpers, and that's a much more generic group, I guess.
Okay, that's the broad group of folks that have instigated or at least organized this takeover, you could say.
Yes.
And with that being said, because I guess what confuses me here is that the Republican coalition is having this pro-Trump, not so pro-Trump fight internally.
Right.
And it would be mistaken for members of the public to think that all Republicans are pro-Trump. Would that be correct?
Oh, that's very correct. I like the man's policies. I see how our country was better off 2 years ago than it is 10 months after Biden. But that doesn't mean I want Trump to run for president again. I voted for him twice, but I don't necessarily want him to come back. I'm not anti-Trump. There's a lot of us that are just reasonable people who love the Trump policies, but the divisiveness that it's caused our country and our party are extreme. And so how can we bring back these pro-American policies that aren't necessarily connected with re-electing Donald Trump? So again, his tweets and his personality and his personal transgressions I didn't like, but his policies and the direction he was taking this country are, to me, dynamic and amazing. Looking at specifically the African American community and what he did for reforms to our prison system, and what he did for the economy as a whole, lifting every category and every class of worker in this country up. I'm shocked at how quickly people want to just gloss over the incredible economy that we had just 2 years ago.
So with that dichotomy aside, that parody. I don't know if I can say parody, but that contrast aside, what, from your standpoint, is going on at the grassroots level here in Washoe County, with that in mind?
Yeah, so I saw Mike last night. I was at the NPRI dinner, and I didn't really get a chat with him too much, but he had his PAC table there, and they talked about the Nevada Wins PAC, I think is that what he calls it?
Yes.
And to me, Mike was doing exactly what a Republican Party chairman should do. Get voters out and get Republicans elected. That is the core mission of the Republican Party. It is not to decide who is more conservative or Republican than the other. It is to get Republicans in there, in office, and get Republicans out to vote. And where we've fallen off the rails is calling people rhinos and Trumpers, when they're just Republicans trying to follow the basic core values and mission of the Republican Party, which is smaller government, less taxes, more freedoms, more growth. If we just would focus on those core values, we could get along a lot better.
But alas, it appears from your standpoint, what is going on?
Yeah, and I don't understand why Mike making an effort to target independent voters who are primarily frustrated Republicans to get them to the ballot box was a bad thing. A third of our voters in this state now are independent, nonpartisans, and they are ticked off Democrats and they're ticked off Republicans who don't see the party as standing up for their core ideals anymore. And why we have and this isn't just falling on the feet of Trumpsters. Because it does go back to the Pat Robertson group and the Tea Party group, and we do this a lot to ourselves. And I am kind of chuckling and enjoying what's happening right now with the Democrat Party. It's like it's about time they started eating their young. We've been doing it for decades. So it's nice to see the progressives fighting the moderates. And right now, the moderates are winning. Right now, the conservatives are winning, and yet they're not winning by getting more Republicans elected. They're just winning by taking over the Clark County and the Washoe County system and keeping a fool in place, as Michael McDonald is, and you can definitely quote me on that. I think the man has been as divisive as anyone, and I think he's been unproductive. And I think he should go, but he somehow continues to convince people that he's doing something good, and I don't see it. But I miss the days of Frank Fahrenkopf, I'll put it that way.
Yeah, Frank Fahrenkopf, the current, if my correct my memory serves correctly, the prolific former chair of the National Republican Party during the Reagan era, and the American Gaming Association lobbyist.
Now, yes, and back in the day, the chairman of the Washoe County Republican Party and the chairman of the Nevada State Republican Party. So I look at what he and Paul Laxalt did when Paul Laxalt was governor and Paul Laxalt was senator, how they, as the party leaders, as the elected officials, built up the party. We have not had anyone since Paul Laxalt act in a governing role to rebuild the party. Jim Gibbons is probably the closest that came because Jim kind of came up through the ranks. But, Kenny Gwynn, and I loved Kenny Gwynn, but he did not do anything to really bring back and be the head of that Republican Party because he was considered a rhino. Brian Sandoval, a rhino. So they didn't really help rebuild the party because the party turned their back on them. And uniting for a greater good is not something this party does well at all.
So, with that being said, I guess that from your outside observation, in your encounters with the electeds, the professional political class who are seeing what's going on, what are they saying about this moment in time?
That's a good question. I don't think they're getting along at their level. The Republican caucus, when you've got a Jim Wheeler running against a Robin Titus, and they're trying for the Senate seat that Settlemeyer's leaving, even though they're both uber conservatives, you've got this continual. There's a way to run against each other without trying to tear us apart, and it seems like the Republicans aren't figuring that out. I remember P.K. O'Neill, the legislator in Carson, was just so chastised, and they didn't want him to run again, and now he's back again.
Right.
So if we would stop focusing on how conservative they are versus is it better to have a Republican in office, that would be great. And Chuck Muth, of course, would totally disagree with me on this, because Chuck is all about let's get conservatives elected, not Republicans elected. And case in point, we got Brian Sandoval elected, and we got the commerce tax. So I understand and support his idea too. But I think the electeds, they don't want to touch the party structure because it's too hard to fix. So what you've got is people who are elected to office building their own silos of support. You've got Jill Dickman building up her own support base. You've got P.K. O'Neill, building up his own base. Anybody that's running, they have to go build their own base instead of relying on the Republican Party to provide them that base. And that's very frustrating for someone who has run for office or for someone like now who's elected, going, I can't count on the party to help me.
I mean, you raise an interesting point in the whole dynamic that's going on with the grassroots and the political class in Nevada, in that you've got electeds and professional political people who see the current party structure and current party apparatuses as not conducive to their missions and goals. And they go on and build these apparatuses, these campaign structures that are independent of the party structure. And then come campaign donation season or come campaign fundraising season, you've got electeds kind of doing their own thing and the party kind of knocking on the door and asking for help, and the electeds kind of shun them away or eschew them, or it's either they're helping or they don't. And do you see that contributing to why this dynamic exists between the parties and the political class in the Republican Party?
Well, and then the way you broach that, it also makes me think that the people that are benefiting the most are the Republican paid consultants, because they can go tell a candidate, hey, I've got this database of givers, I've got this database of voters, and this is becoming proprietary information instead of back in the day when we had one database that we all shared. It's almost playing into the hands of consultants, of which I'm one, but I'm not a election consultant. But yeah, I mean, the way you phrase that, I'm thinking, wow, this is really benefiting the consultants who have the best mailing lists and the best walk lists, and a more dysfunctional Republican Party will benefit the political consultants. And that's a really sad statement to make, as I am friends and colleagues with most of those consultants, but yeah, you just hit on something I hadn't really thought about.
And with that being said, I mean, that dynamic in play, with the current takeover that's happened at the Washoe Republican Party, do you foresee a further continuation of that narrative, or could this end up, well, where do you see this going?
Oh, jeez. Like I said, I've seen it happen 3 times, and none of these times have we come back a stronger, more united party. So, and it's not just Donald Trump. It's going to be the next person that comes along. It could be the next, it could be a Joey Gilbert who is leading part of that dynamic. It could be a Dean Heller who's leading the other side of the dynamic, the more moderate Republicans. I don't see it going well.
Okay.
I guess I just don't. I don't see a dynamic leader stepping forward to say, yo, people, stop your infighting. Let's all get behind Republican candidates who win their primaries. And if you think of who wins primaries, it's generally the conservatives.
Uh-huh.
Okay, we've got our conservative. Now we're riding that horse, and we're going to stand by them. But that's not happening. Nobody is saying, hey, everybody, get on board.
Uh-huh.
Tips, I'm trying to get, was it Scott in Wisconsin?
Rick
Governor Scott?
Or it's Scott. I'm thinking Scott Walker.
Scott Walker. All it takes is one thing like Scott Walker did. He took on the unions.
Uh-huh.
Every Republican hates unions. So maybe that's what we need. We need a governor who's going to stand up to the unions and take them on, and then we can all get behind him. Because I don't think Scott Walker was an uber conservative, but he made union reform an issue that we could all get behind. So getting behind an issue and getting us off this fractionalization and focus on what we can all agree upon would probably be useful. But I just don't see anybody being that unifying person.
Well, and I guess it kind of brings me back to another central point when you say that there would normally be that you don't see a unifying figure on the horizon or a unifying element. And I raise that in reference to the number of candidates you have running for governor, and also this almost seeming different split the U.S. Senate race, where you have an almost coalescing in the Nevada Republican establishment behind one candidate, and you have the grassroots appearing to support another candidate in Captain Sam Brown versus Adam Laxalt. And there is no adult in the room to kind of clear the road or clear the way for either one of these candidates or at the governor's race. Who would that normally be in normal operating conditions?
It should be the chairman of the Republican Party. And back in the day, it was a Frank Fahrenkopf, who did sit down with people and said, hey, Dean, I know you want to run again, but you're done. Okay? You've been a senator, you've been this, you've been that. Go stay on the Bank of America board. Go back to your ranch. We're going to find the next generation of leaders. And whether it's a Joe Lombardo or Joey Gilbert, you just don't have that kind of a dynamic person to take on that role. And, to some extent, the political consultants tried to do that with this Joe Lombardo's our candidate and nobody else should run. Well, a lot of other people weren't in the room, apparently, when that happened. And I reminded Dean of the song from Hamilton. I wasn't in the room where it happened.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
I wasn't in the room where it happened. The room where it happened. Were you not there, Dean? Did you not get the memo? You're not supposed to be running for governor. Because everybody got in the room and said, this is how it's going to happen. Wow. Yeah, because I'm going to Hamilton next week, and I've been reading up on the music, and I've read the words to that song, and I'm like, that's the day when that kind of shit happened. That's how Republican leaders fell in line. That's when everybody fell in line. Because the smoky backfilled room said, this is our candidate, we're going out there, we're all united. We're not doing it. I can't even say the business community gets together like we should. We meet monthly. All the business lobbyists, and there was a group of us that was really funding to beat Cannizzaro, and at the same time, there's another group of business people supporting Cannizzaro for her Senate seat. It's like, guys, unless we all get united, we're going to continue to split our state up, and everyone's so focused on covering their ass, they're not looking to the future.
Wow, I'm geeking out because you were telling me so much that is happening and happened that explains so much of what's going on right now. And it explains what's going on above the party level, but it also explains a few things of what's happening at the county level, where the grassroots normally has a bigger say on things than most other operations. But it appears because the grassroots isn't engaged, you have this kind of disconnect.
Yeah. I mean, I won't give it. I've been a past vice chair of the Washington County Republican Party. You think I'd be giving them $20 a month every month for the rest of my life? But I won't until we get a leader that's willing to stand up and take control. And yet I don't know who that leader is. So am I partially to blame that I'm not doing more to take a leadership role in Washington County? I mean, I've been there, done that, but we have ourselves to blame. Who are we willing to get behind, and who's willing to stand up and write checks? And if we don't understand that money matters, this is all about money. The role of gaming and the role of mining and the role of business and the role of the teachers' unions, that's who runs our state politics. It's not our county structures. So part of me is not really worried about what happens at the Washoe County party level. Because if I was a candidate, and I've been a candidate, I'm going to make sure my campaign contacts my people and gets them out to vote. I'm not going to rely on the Washoe County Republican Party. And that's why I'm going back to this whole siloing thing. Candidates are just becoming siloed, and they're just focused on their own legislative district or their own Senate district or their own congressional district, and they're not sharing data. And that data is so important. If we knew that someone's a pro-life, Second Amendment, pro-First Amendment voter, we know they're going to go vote Republican no matter what. But if you're not sharing that information with anybody else, and if you're not walking that district to know that that's a 2A, 1A pro-life voter, then you don't know that that's a target you should get out. And thus the candidates are left trying to get the voters out on their own. So it's an every man for himself kind of thing, and that's how we continue to lose elections.
Because there's no unity, or there seems to be no. To use the Democrats as a perfect model, there's no coordinated effort or coordinated campaign that runs and tells everybody where to go.
Yeah. All you need to do is look at how the state got dominated over the past decades. It was called Harry Reid. Pretty simple. Harry Reid was Harry Reid was to the Democrats what Frank Farrakhan was to the Republicans. Except Harry Reid was 2 years ago, and Frank Farrakhan was 2 decades ago.
Wow.
We need a Harry Reid in the Republican Party. And Paul Laxalt's grandson, Adam, has tried to do that, but he's no Paul Laxalt. And he doesn't have a Frank Farrakhan as his sidekick. So it's just, and no disrespect to Adam. I admire anybody that puts their name on a ballot, having done it 4 times myself. But they're not a unifying group at this point, and it's hard for anybody to get behind any of them at this point.
Wow, you got me all speechless on what you've just said here, because in a way you've kind of answered my major question, I think, in regards to what role do you see this party that's somehow had this takeover occur, in what role they'll have in the elections. And seemingly, you've also put this in context of a greater picture.
Okay.
So I thank you for that, because that helps me understand how big a deal this is, but also, from your standpoint, how not big of a deal this is.
Well, yeah, the Washoe County Republican Party is inconsequential at this point. The Clark County Republican Party is inconsequential. The Nevada State Party is inconsequential. And I remember seeing something from Chuck recently about the 2020 election, when somebody from the Trump campaign said, we cannot depend on the Republican National Committee and on the Nevada State Republican Party to win this for Trump. We need our own separate organization. And that happened in 2016, that happened in 2020. 2020 wasn't as successful, but and to me, you're turning this over to the political consultants, and you're ignoring the grassroots. I like what you're saying. County parties are grassroots driven, and a lot of people at the grassroots are just saying, "Screw it, I'm walking away. I'm done. I'm not writing another check. You guys keep losing." Well, that's really not the answer, because you're not writing the check, there is no county party, there is no organization. So you're kind of exacerbating the problem by saying you're walking away. And you're turning it over then to the professional fundraisers and to the professional consultants and the professional candidates. People that have nothing else to do but run for office because they can't hold a real job. They choose not to hold a real job, but
I mean, I'm not here to judge on that. That's everyone's choice to make on what role they take. But I want to ask because traditionally political parties are usually the engine of grassroots organization and also the creator of careers. They usually, in most other places, where they identify candidates, they recruit them, they support them, they train them, and get them ready to run. And in Nevada, we don't have, at least in the Republican Party or in the conservative movement, there's no organic method for that to happen at this time. And that, in fact, has created, from one observation, the dearth or the lack of a front bench or of a stable of candidates that have run
that bench team. So what you're seeing now is a woman named Liz Arnold, and I'm glad to introduce you to her. Liz Arnold is working on creating a group of women, business women, to start recruiting women to run for office who are business oriented. You're seeing the Nevada Economic Opportunity, I think it's what's called NEO, which is coming from the business side, and they're looking at trying to create a recruitment opportunity for business people to run for office. They don't care if they're Republican or Democrat. I mean, I know of several liberal Democrat business owners who would make great politicians because even though they're liberal and even though I might disagree with them on climate change, they own a business and they get it. So what you're seeing now is that where we depend on the grassroots and the county, unpaid county people to recruit and train people, the business sector is kicking in, saying, fine, we're going to take it over. We're going to start doing this. And that's just two organizations that I know of. On the left, you have the Battle-Born Progress. You have Progressive Leadership Alliance. They are out there recruiting people. They're out there training candidates. They're out there raising money for them. So we need to be stealing a few pages from the Democrat Progressive playbook and realize that you can't leave this. Candidate recruitment cannot be left up to a volunteer-run organization. There's just too much damn money involved. This is our state's economy at risk. And there's enough of us on the business side who care about politics to not leave it to the county volunteers. They don't understand the consequences. They're not the ones paying the commerce tax. They're not the ones dealing with the mining tax increase. They're not the ones right now looking at an unemployment insurance rate being increased on small business. The grassroots people, God love them, they're not paying the bill that the legislature is writing. So the business community has no choice at this point but to step up to the plate and start recruiting candidates and training them and giving them the resources to run for office, which in the long run makes a county party structure archaic, obsolete.
Wow.
So another county chairman in and out, I don't really care anymore because the rest of us are kicking in and saying we can't leave this to the grassroots volunteers. That's probably not the tack you expected to take, huh?
No. But it gives me a different perspective on the current state of affairs, as well as I think you've, in a way, answered my question of what impact or why this event is, from your standpoint, inconsequential.
It's inconsequential. I don't really care who the party chair is anymore. Because they have for decades not shown that they are, and this is where I fault Michael McDonald. I put it right at the top. The buck stops with him. He has done nothing to create a structure that supports grassroots involvement. And the business community, and in the same sense, the union community. I mean, believe me, the AFL-CIO is doing everything that the business community is doing. And frankly, they're doing it better. So we're trying to learn. But I think you've probably heard about the blueprint that came out of Colorado.
Yes, the Colorado blueprint that famously turned a purple state, or right-leaning purple state, into a Democratic powerhouse.
Yeah, that's in every state now. That's their playbook. And I remember Paul Enos brought us all that book, 10 years ago, the head of Nevada Trucking, 10 years ago, and made us all read it. I think I made it to chapter 3 before I got so depressed I couldn't handle it. But that's the Colorado blueprint. The playbook is what we should be looking at. How they turned a moderate to conservative state blue, and they're doing it now in every state. And we're not fighting it, but our Republican Party is not fighting it. The business community is fighting it, because we're the ones that are writing the checks.
And with that being said,
and I don't mean the donations, I mean the checks to government, because they keep increasing everything on us.
Thank you for clarification, because I was about to say that those are pretty hefty checks that you're talking about in terms of campaign contributions and campaign.
Well, in that sense, yes. I mean, look at what gaming gives. Look what the realtors give. Look what the mining gives. But then look what the AFL-CIO gives and what the teachers union give. You start following. The Nevada Independent has done a very good job of following the money. The unions are looking out 10 years and saying, okay, we have this candidate here, and we need to defeat her. Ellen Spiegel's a perfect example. Ellen Spiegel was a pro-business Democrat, and she was taken out in the primary by Roberta Lane, the former chair of the Democrat Party. That was not something that was just decided a few months before the election. That was years in the making, because they got tired of Ellen Spiegel being a pro-business Democrat. They don't want pro-business Democrats in the legislature anymore. So the Democrats are primarying Democrats successfully to turn our legislature more progressive. Wow. We're not doing that on the Republican side. We might primary a Republican, but then we lose the election because it's so whack over person we can't win the general election.
So many points of information I want to ask because of what you just raised.
4 or 5 articles now, right?
You've almost given me that much here. This is definitely branching off into different places on the state of play. But I have to keep it to the county party again because
focus.
Yes, because I can't.
Inconsequential county party.
As you say. You talk about primarying, and I talked to the chair of the county party, the chairman pro tem, who talked about refocusing the party's efforts on 4 core areas, and election integrity being one of them, supporting concerns they have at the school board level, and things of the like, and promoting freedom first candidates was something else they were focused on. From your standpoint, in the neck of the woods that you operate in, how viable do you see that kind of a policy agenda or political agenda being?
I would love it if the county party focused on county elections. That's where they should be focused on. Michael was dabbling in the legislature. That's not where they belong. They belong at the county level. Who's running for school board? Who's running for county commissioner? Who's running for county treasurer? Those jobs impact daily life for Washoe County residents more than anything. Just look at the lawsuit that we're having to still go through with Incline. Had we had a decent assessor back 15 years ago, we could have avoided that. I mean, don't call Bill Barham, and you'll get an earful of how that could have been avoided. So we focus so much on governor. And, well, of course, this governor has tremendous power over us. What's happening at the county treasurer level, the county clerk level? You want election integrity? Let's go get a county clerk that's really going to follow the law and certify our elections and do forensic analysis of our machines. Those are huge. So if a county focused on the county electeds, I'd love that. That's where they should be focused.
But do you see that likelihood coming?
Well, if that's their goal, and if that's how they're going to stay focused, I think that's a possibility. You know, let people that have statewide issues focus on the legislature, the business community primarily, because the business community, while impacted by, you know, assessment rates on buildings, they're more concerned about the payroll tax and the commerce tax and regulations that are coming from the legislature. So if the county would really focus on our school, my God, school board has never been more important, especially now that we're looking at a potentially fourth resignation/censor. Focus on the school board. Go find parents who are willing to stand up for their kids and get them to run and give them training. And, I mean, Jeff Church is a perfect example of someone with great passion but not great implementation. So how do we get people better trained to serve? One thing's running. The other thing is serving.
And that sounds like the question. How do you make those two work together?
Right. Yeah. And it's vetting of candidates. It's spending some time and then getting behind that candidate. I mean, if you look at how, like, Alexis Hill won in the county commission because she was recruited by the Democrats, they focused on her, they didn't let anybody else get in the race, and she beat Marsha Burke-Bickler.
She did.
You have woman you and I both know that worked for Ensign, the black chick who just ran out of my head, who was a Republican. Verita
Black, yeah.
Yeah, Verita Black Prothra. She is like, okay, the Democrats are getting behind her. Whatever race she wants, she's in, and nobody else is running against her. The Democrats are picking people and putting them in place and telling everybody, no, you're not running against her. If Washoe County Republican Party would do that on a school board level, on a county commission level, on a county clerk level, on a treasurer, comptroller, whatever it is, yeah, go do that. Focus on those. But somebody's got to have the balls to stand up and say, no, you're not going to run. And you need a political operative as a chairman of a party to understand that you sit down with candidates and say, you're running for this, you're running for that, and you're running for that. Case over. Move on.
This raises an interesting point, and I'm glad you have raised that consideration that there needs to be a experienced political pro to potentially run the county party. At the volunteer and grassroots level, how likely are you to get someone like that to be willing to head an organization like that?
I think someone like a Marsha Burke-Bickler would be a great party chairman. Somebody who's run for office, who's won and lost, who has a strong name recognition, who has the ability to raise money, and who isn't looking to run again. There are people out there that have said, you know what, I'm good, I don't need to run anymore. They're out there. It's just a matter of giving them the faith that they're going to have the ability to build a party, they're going to have the money that they need to raise, and that comes from Michael McDonald. So, to me, it goes to the top.
So much I'm learning. So much. I'm taking away from this conversation that I have to stay focused on the heart of this, but you definitely nailed a lot of serious considerations that explain the state of play.
Yeah.
And also, but also portend to the potential options that the current configuration of the county party looks at right now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see? Now, I'm not too well versed. I'm still learning the reputation and the background of these people who've taken over the organization. And some of them are experienced and some of them are not, in reference to having been in their roles in some way or another. From what you know of the current configuration of the county party right now, what's your say on that?
I don't even know who they are. How's that?
Oh, okay.
I think, is it Mark Leonard?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to go to my computer, and I think I know Mark, because I think he's involved in the Nevada Firearms Coalition, which I'm the lobbyist for. So let me look at this. Mark.
Okay. As you're looking this up, I appreciate that.
So, hold on, I'm going to switch my head here real quick.
Okay.
Okay. Is he a CPA?
I have to apologize. I'm not too well versed with his background. My understanding is he is currently a book coach here in Northern Nevada. And he's helped. Comes from the tech sector in California.
Okay. So I'm just doing a little LinkedIn, and I'm showing a CPA. No, that's Cartwright Publishing founder. Okay, I have no idea who he is.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm afraid it's the Mark Leonard that's doing stuff for, well, yeah. Interview with Washington County Republican. Oh, that is him. Okay, so, yeah, I don't know who he is. Pro Tem Mark Leonard. So this is your article. Okay.
Right.
I'm just seeing his photo now. Yeah, I don't know who he is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And does Carol Feinberg ring a bell?
Oh, yeah, everybody knows Carol.
Okay.
What's she?
She's the secretary pro tem, right? Or she's the secretary right now.
Okay. The woman's got conservative values, and she was doing these coalition lunches. She's been an activist for a long time, and while I might not necessarily agree with her, she's got street cred, in my opinion. She really does.
Okay.
So I'm okay with Carol. Yeah.
And then they have treasurer, who was the previous treasurer under a previous term with Chairman Kanasi, Sandra Linares, who's also a former candidate for state assembly.
Oh, yeah. I guess I know. I've met her. Not exactly real credible, I would say, but I do know. I know of her. I've seen her talk. Yeah.
So with that lineup, what say you on their chances on trying to organize and keep the ship afloat?
God bless them and good luck. Again, I'm grateful to anybody who's willing to stand up and step into leadership. Especially when we know we've had some challenges with folks. So I want them to succeed, obviously. A strong county party is critical to strong county involvement. And voter turnout being their number one issue. They need to focus on getting voters out to the polls. And they need to help getting people registered. If they would just focus on those two things and not start tearing apart candidates who are running for office. All right. Let the voters make that decision. That's not their job. I was county chair in 95 and 96. And in 96, I went to work with Hal Furman, who was running for the U.S. Senate. Mm-hmm. And I was told I had to step down as chairman of the party because I was working for a candidate in a primary. And I never really thought about it. I'm like, well, it's not that I was a person of integrity. I'm not going to work for one candidate. I'm going to work for the party to be strong. And after a few people brought this up, I said, okay, I resign. fine. I'm a political consultant. I'll go do my job. And when I left, I was vice chair under George Peake. I love George Peake. I really do. But George was too busy running his businesses. There was just been this leadership void after I left, because I was literally in that office every day. I worked out of that office. This was when we were down at Jay Sauerwein's house on Little House near California, my favorite muffin. And I was there every day. And I recruited so many people to come in and get involved. And when I left, George is like, oh shit, I got to come back and run this place. So I have seen a leadership void. And again, no disrespect to George. He just had a business to run, and it was a booming business because he's a developer. So, but that's when I said, okay, my being involved in a Senate primary is being construed as being biased, then I will get out of here. But I saw my role as that county chairman, vice chairman, is to focus on voter registration and voter turnout. I didn't care who the candidates were. It was up to the candidates whether they won or lost their election. So it's time to get back to that. This county party needs to get back to the basics. Their job is to register voters and get them out to vote. They should not be into candidate recruitment and deciding who should win a primary or not. To me, they were over their skis on that. And if this group comes in with those two goals, focus on those two things, they can be successful.
I will take that and call that a perfect way to almost close this.
Call it a
because,
wrap.
Yeah, because that kind of tells me where the heart, what the focus should be, and what versus where the experienced hand thinks perspective could be. But I'm going to close with one more question, because I want one or two more questions, because I want to make sure I'm gleaning as much as I can from experienced political operatives such as yourself before I go.
Okay.
If you had any piece of advice to tell the current leadership of the Nevada Washoe Republican Party what to do, what would you tell them?
Well, kind of like what I just said. Focus on registration and get out the vote. But don't read the mission of the Republican Party. Go back to our core and look at what is the mission and the purpose of the Republican Party. And understand that a Ben Kiefer and a Jill Tolles can follow those principles as much as an Annie Black can.
Wow.
And that it's not their job to pick and choose who should be elected. Their job is to focus on getting people elected. Because that's where we start breaking apart.
Okay. And I guess my last question, this is kind of the, I think I've asked this several times, but I want to try to get this to close.
Maybe I'll answer it correctly this time.
No, I don't want. There's no right or wrong answer. There's your answer, and your answer is a perspective that I am definitely interested in.
Okay.
Going forward with the 22 election, and what you've seen and what you were aware of, what success do you think that this dichotomy regarding the separation of the leadership of the county party has gone off to form their own pack in Nevada wins, and the county party, how do you think those will coexist?
I'm going to look at Mike's pack as just another pack. We've got a lot of packs. And if I remember right, his goal is to focus on independent voters who could vote Republican. Is that right?
That's one of their goals, yes.
Yeah, so I love that idea. I think focusing on nonpartisan voters is going to be critical to winning an election on either side. And if this pack, like the party, focuses on how horrible the Biden-Sisolak administration has been, Republicans will win no matter what degree of Republican they are. We need to remember the enemy is the Democrats in this. We need to remember that who we are fighting is Joe Biden and Steve Sisolak and Alexandria AOC, for easier saying, and Elizabeth Warren and Crazy Bernie. That's who we're fighting. Let's remember who we're fighting. We are fighting socialist progressives who are trying to take over our country and take away our rights. If Republicans would focus on that, we will get to victory, and we will hold our Republicans' feet to the fire. But we can't hold their feet to the fire unless we get them in office.
Fair. Well said. Well, encapsulation. Not that I was keeping score, but that was a pretty good way of assessing the situation from your standpoint.
Well, and it's good for me to kind of think to the suit. You're asking some really good questions because it's making me think, what should we be doing? So I appreciate your questions.
You're very welcome. Well, you've given me a different perspective today. So I'm going to say again, my mind gets blown again by another perspective that has got a good thesis statement and a good thesis on the role of a county party, but also on how we got here.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of history, like you said, and unfortunately I have to live through a lot of it. I didn't think I was that old until I started talking about Pat Robertson, and I realized how old I am. I didn't even go into the fact that Steve Bork went to jail, actually prison, so can't even talk about that. But well, I could. I mean, he was caught up in the whole HOA debacle in Las Vegas. But anyway, no, it's funny when you sent me that email. I started thinking about, well, there was the Tea Party. Oh shit, there was the Pat Robertson. Oh, we've gone through this so many times, and it's wearing us down. And we need a unifier. And I don't know who that. We need a Harry Reid, and I don't see any Republicans stepping up. I think Adam wanted to be that, but he doesn't have the money behind him. Doesn't matter. Harry Reid didn't have much for personality, but man raised money, and he got his people elected. I mean, he got Jackie Rosen elected. He got Captain Cortez Masto elected. He gets his people elected.
He does.
So let's steal the Harry Reid playbook. If we want to be successful, that's the playbook we've got to steal.
A lot of playbooks involved, it sounds like, but it sounds like.
Well, it doesn't just happen. I mean, politics is way too expensive for it to just happen organically. And it's not grassroots. It's a playbook, and some people have got to get on the same playbook.
Wow. So much I've learned today. So much.
Well, you can call me anytime to follow up if I stumped you with anything.
No worries. I will definitely utilize that opportunity. And so Randy, I want to say thank you for imparting your wisdom and your perspective and your experiences in this conversation today. I appreciate it greatly. As I am.
Thank you for asking.
You're welcome. Well, I'm hoping to take a lot of this input I've been given into a piece, hopefully here in the next couple of weeks, and have that out here for the outlet that's I'm working with.
Very good. Well, I'm glad, and I'm just so proud of you for sticking to it. I know you've had some challenging times.
I have.
I'm sorry that you felt like you had to leave the Republican Party, but just know that you've never left my heart. You've always stayed with me, and I'm here if ever I can help. And I seriously mean that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot. And I thank you for understanding why I had to go, so to speak. It was one of many reasons, but it was one of those things where I had to do this, what I'm doing now. I had to kind of get out of the partisan side of things.
Yeah, exactly. And I admire that. I think that's really a patriotic way of looking at this. What's better for my country, what's better for me is to just come at it from a different perspective, and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you. And I am thankful that you look at it that way, because I've had some people say some very interesting things to me about it.
No. You're a good guy, and I'm thrilled to see you continue to follow your dream of being a journalist.
Thank you. Well, thank you.
All right. You bet. And let me know what else you need.
You got it. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off the recording at this time.
Okay.
So that's my interview with Northern Nevada political consultant and experienced political pro, Randi Thompson. And we are out on